afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, What Story Does This Graph Tell? We have our presenter with us, Connie Rivera. I would like to ask you to put your name in the chat and where you're from and tell us a little bit about your title. And then I'm going to turn it over to Connie. Connie.
Thank you, everybody. We're also going to get started with something else for the chat, and I'm just wondering, what do you notice? Oh, somebody has decided that it's a graph. It shows an increase if you start at the bottom and go up. Whatever is being measured gets bigger. It's a set of bars, the comparison bars. The longest line is at the top. There is no legend. Looks like a bar graph. They're horizontal, various lengths. No measurement marks. Perhaps a histogram, no label of the axes, no title. That we've used the color blue. I like the variety here. So there's all kinds of things that you could notice with this. And the idea is that anybody can say an observation, and it can be, anybody can have a correct answer. And you did have some idea about what today's theme was. But if you didn't know that we were going to talk about graphs, you might not have keyed into some of those graph words so far. I'm going to show you more about what that will turn into, but just a little bit here. There's going to be two dimensions to this webinar, and both of them are things that are repeatable with students. You'll have access to all of the slides that you can use with students, the unit that these examples come from. And so the two things are that you're going to experience slow reveal graphs as an instructional strategy, and I'm going to engage you as learners and then talk to you as teachers about several of the graphs. And then these activities are all from a very specific social justice themed project-based unit that I taught my students. So I'll share that unit plan and materials with you. So let's continue looking at that graph. You saw this slide already. I've added some more information. I'm wondering, what do you notice? And Carrie's saying that she's been using slow reveal graphs the last few days, very recently, and students have been digging them. I do find it really engages them. So it turns out that longest bar is from the United States. We've got different nations, different countries. We've got a list of countries. Anything about those countries? The most is the US. That must make us the best. That perception is why I selected this particular graph. I'm hearing highest incarcerated, and India has the smallest bar. Oh, but the US could be the worst. It covers several continents in the list of countries. Starting to wonder about things. It's probably not GDP. The language is English. What else do you wonder? We don't know yet what's being measured. That's what a lot of people are wondering. Is this actual numbers or percentages? What will the bottom show? What makes such a polar difference between India and the United States? Great question. What it's measuring. I'm going to give you a little bit more information, not about what it's measuring so far, but about the number represented for India. And I'm wondering, if India is 33 somethings, what numbers could be written to the bars that come right above that for Sweden or Denmark? Make a prediction for Sweden or Denmark, and then say why you would guess that. It's hard to know what the interval is true. I'm seeing between 45 and 78 so far. That's for Sweden and or Denmark. And those are probably going to be similar numbers. It's double. How do you see double, Julie? Same with Canada and China. I missed what that was connected to. Oh, there might be similar. Oh, yes, the bars are similar length. Looks a little less than double. So it's the length of the bar that you're using, and you're saying if that's that size, the one above should be that amount, and it depends if you're seeing double or a little less, and that can all be based on our screens. All right, so let me show you that it was 57 for Sweden and 59 for Denmark. Are there other countries you can estimate? Put the name of a country and your estimate in the chat, please. Couple of guesses in the 70s for Germany. Maybe 100 for France. Spain, 120. Maybe 110 in Canada. Austria, perhaps 99. Maybe Brazil for 200. Now I'm sounding like a game show. So I would let that go on a lot longer in class and give everybody a chance to maybe even make a measurement using the size of India. But here are our revealed answers. And my question now is, are you happy with your estimates? I'm seeing mostly yes answers, or like, yeah, so. It is sometimes that students are completely unhappy with an estimate that isn't the correct answer. And I always want to stop and talk about an estimate is based on information you have at the time. And once you have more information, you refine your estimate. So if I'd gone up more slowly between like Denmark and Brazil, for example, answers would be more refined than if we started just from having Denmark and skipped all the way up like we just did. So I want students to walk away knowing that an estimate is not wrong if it's not the exact answer. A little more information. Take a look in the bottom right. What could this graph be about? All right. Consensus so far is something to do with incarceration, prison, jail sentence, etc. I will tell you that the sentencing project can mean different things for different people. I will say now that you are correct to be thinking about along those lines about something in corrections. But that image to my students who didn't know that terminology was an English sentence. And those things that I saw as the light shining through bars to them was the fluorescent lighting and how we separate those kinds of ceilings. So I thought that was interesting. When you open up something to hear what students have to say, it gives you great formative assessment about things that I had previously made an assumption about. I thought might not know that, but I didn't realize how that could be turned into a different context. There we go. All right, this is our complete graph. Incarceration rates, international rates of incarceration per 100,000. So I often hear something like this, but wait a minute, that country, whichever one they're pointing out, has less people than the United States. So of course the US is higher. What could you say in response? What do you think? There are some countries up here with populations lower than the United States. That's not per 100,000. Can you say more? And other people share? It's not the total number. It's not the total number incarcerated. It's per 100,000. rates take population into consideration, and it's a rate. And rates can be less familiar to students, and that's why it's oftenly misunderstood. And then a lot of you are making the point that rates allow us to compare across different population sizes. So that is something that you could explore with students. I follow up that graph when I'm using this with students with 3 different graphs that draw out multiplicative reasoning questions, because that's what this entire unit is trying to do, to get students to develop multiplicative reasoning, which is the beginning of proportional reasoning, which is needed to understand rates. And so that's a taste of that slowly revealed graph from the student side. And here's a storyboard from the teacher side. So it's a look behind the scenes of how I help lead the story that I'm telling. So I know I'm going to be teaching about the topic of incarceration throughout the unit, but students don't know that yet. And this is going to be just one example of a social justice issue. I chose these to make these slides about this topic because it's one that I feel passionately about. And so I'm using this theme to teach students how to interpret graphs and to reason proportionally. By the end, and students don't know that at this point, I want students to be able to apply these ideas of proportional reasoning using a visual to a social injustice that they feel passionately about. So if a teacher were using this unit, they could use this unit, just replace the graphs with a social injustice that you feel strongly about and present it from your topic. And in the end, students are all bringing in their own passions. So we started off our first graph with noticing and wonder. It's a common way to start a slow reveal graph. And usually it doesn't have enough information for students to know what it's about. Then we revealed the countries. Then I revealed the count for India to predict other counts. And that was because of exactly what happened in the chat. We started talking about double, almost double, and comparing those sizes. Often when students just see the numbers right off, they aren't even thinking about what size the bar is, just more or less. Then I revealed the count and the source to ask for a prediction of topic. So prediction is a big part of this. And then we revealed the title, and then there's an opportunity to dive deeper into that per 100,000 that I just glossed over fairly quickly, and you would take more time with in your class. So this slide is hidden for use with students, but it's in the slide deck that you'll access. And I did intend to make this social justice topic an introduction that made the United States look good at first, depending on how you saw it, for a surprise. Most of the students in my class in this program were from other countries. And so that was part of the reason why sentencing was not a part of their vocabulary in this use of the word. And then I wanted to be able to begin to address those misconceptions about how the group size is related to a rate and how it affects things. So this was a great place to start some proportional reasoning. I just wanted to, before I go to what's on this slide, acknowledging that I'm like going really through some topics that may touch your life and feel like I'm handling it too callously and too quickly. In class, I spent a lot more time talking about the topic and letting students respond to like, wow, I'm from India and I didn't even know anybody who had been incarcerated because it was so rare. That happened when I used these slides. But I'm going to keep going through. I use a lot of time for this lesson. I see the question in the chat, but this really depends on the pace of your class. My students were at the same time as taking a high school equivalency class, still enrolled in the English classes. And so that affected how much time that it took. And when you see the whole unit plan, you can see that you might not have to teach all of them. I also incorporated some reading from the change agent because they needed that, not just the math from me. So if you were teaching just math, you might decide to send the reading home as something extra, but it's totally up to you how you pick and choose from it. And that's one of the beauties of project-based learning, is that you give them just enough ingredients to build their own project. So that will be different in each class. So let's talk about the idea of slow reveal for a minute. So why, like what's different? If I just showed you that final graph at the end, how did it feel different the way that I slowly revealed the information? Ah. And I, and the size of this webinar, might not be able to keep up with adding to this slide, but I'll jot down some ideas. I'm glad you felt time to think. I wanted that feel, and I would make it be much more time to think for students that were in class. Oh, yes, I made an assumption that other people would know what TMI was too. I should write that. Too much information. My kids are all in their 20s-ish, so I definitely know a lot of those acronyms that I wouldn't otherwise. Oh, time to speculate. I like that word, exploration and speculate. A chance to be right, even if they totally don't understand it. That's well worded. Lots of possibilities. Invested because they're putting in predictions. And we could get into the meat of what we're actually looking at with that topic, like Julie's saying. Focus on the structure. Yes, I didn't give you everything to look at, and then you don't know which way to turn. Go ahead and keep sharing your ideas. I'm going to go back to my slides here. Yeah, and there's no shame in being wrong. Like that, nobody could know the answer to this because nobody had seen this exact graph. I'd like to take you through another one as a little taste of it, so you can really get a feel for what it's like to be a part of slow reveal graphs. So what do you notice here? Lots of people, one in each group is wearing orange or is orange. There's one orange in all. The sizes are different group sizes. Lots of people standing. Actually, you say you see proportion. Can you say more? This must be dealing with a population of some kind. We're wondering how many in a size group. The numbers in each group are different. Looks like uniforms. It's one out of something. I see that written in more algebraically. One person in orange is a different proportion in each group. Okay. Do the colors have something to do with ethnicity? So we're starting to change from observations about like, what do you notice, to I'm wondering some things. Population of incarceration specific to a group. Yep, we're going to wonder about those groups in just a minute. So yeah, there's 8 different groups here. What could they be? So here we have an answer, 1 in 9, 1 in 17, 1 in 3, 1 in 6. What do you wonder? Are the orange people in orange jumpsuits? So that reminds me that a student said, I'm on to you, miss. Orange is the new black. So it might have something to do with that. Common representation of uniform color for incarcerated people. It could be that the groups are people with a genetic trait. Is it desirable to wear orange? Could these be domestic violence statistics? I'm giving you part of the title. The title of this is lifetime likelihood of, and then I'm wondering what could this be about? some kind of statistics for sure. Getting heart disease, and we're thinking it might be a incarceration topic, so lifetime likelihood of incarceration, of marriage, of disease outcomes. Is it only about men? Great question. You're going to see more about that, Vanessa. Is it race or ethnicity, race or class, earning a doctorate, getting diabetes, recidivism, trouble with that word, age of incarceration before getting an education? Those are tied, aren't they, those topics? All right, so we know that we're missing some information about what these groups are. We're missing the rest of the title, and we are, of course, also missing the information about where it came from. I haven't given you everything yet, but here is the title. Lifetime likelihood of imprisonment of U.S. residents born in 2001. So I have raised two U.S. residents born in 2001, and they fall in different categories here. And we've made a lot of predictions already, so I'm going to move forward. There we go. There's one more reveal after this. But now you see that the top row represents a certain group of men and the bottom row represents a certain group of women. And some predictions are coming up about race and ages and gender, income, sex, family income. I might have gone too far back to grab that one. And I will say that the idea of like that group that has the largest size of people, there are some like, let me try to understand that. Like, how does that relate to the other ones? Like, is it good to be in that group or is it better to be in the one to the left of it? More likely, less likely. That's what we're going to explore. And here's where you might have noticed, wait, that symbol looks like the same thing that's on the men's restroom. And that's how all the women are represented too. That often comes up right now. So I go through a couple of questions that are saying, okay, a man who's born in 2001 who's in this group is it more likely or less likely to be imprisoned in his lifetime than a man in this group? So we're not going to answer, well, I'm too late to say that, so that's fine. We're not going to stop to talk about the math of that, but I would definitely explore that deeply with the class. There are two slides here to get students thinking carefully about ratios because it can be really confusing that being in a fewer person group means that you're more likely. So give students lots of think time to explain how they determine their answer, and that will help other students find a way to think through it that makes sense for them. And like I said, students need a lot of practice with this comparison thinking. So there's a few slides in here before getting to the final, what are the groups? So this is the fully revealed graph. That practice with drawing conclusions where I asked more likely or less likely was a scaffolding, because now after this, we're not doing this, I'm just telling you what I did with the class. After this slow reveal graph, then I'm asking students to write 2 or 3 statements that compare two groups. So we can keep talking about comparison and keep making sense of how two groups within this compare. So I said that we're going to look at graphs that tell a story, and really all graphs do. What story did this graph tell? Oops. Let's collect some ideas. Ahead. It's kind of an open question. It can be about math that you observed. It can be the story about incarceration in the United States. It can be along any of those lines. Men are more likely to be locked up. It can also tell us a personal story. Yeah, like I said, I've got somebody in each row. Um, and I guess either one of them could be considered white by looking at them. And so I think that sometimes has to do more with um with it than anything. Incarceration related to, oh, so we're asking questions. Yeah, and so there's the connecting this, like, does it have to do with the number of crimes? And does it mean that white women don't commit crimes and that the other groups are more likely to? We can ask a lot of really deep questions when it comes to this. Are women less violent than men, just less likely to go to jail? I definitely feel like I'm rushing this topic because I would rather spend more time like thinking deeply, but I want to plant all of these ideas and seeds about what you could do with your class. So I feel like I'm like staying at the surface level, giving you a taste. And these topics, like I said, I'm being calm right now because I've given this more than once, but I do tend to get a little fired up and want to spend the time on it. So if you have any questions for me, please put them in the chat and I'll take a look after I share the storyboard. Questions about the unit or how it went in class or anything. And just remember, you will get the resources for this. Again, this slide's hidden for use with students. So my goal with this particular graph was not just to use a pictograph because we hadn't seen that representation yet, but also to share this disparity. And this comes from the materials at the Sentencing Project. Mass incarceration has not touched all communities equally. That's a quote from them. So my math goal, still to draw out proportional reasoning, and I added in the idea of using the comparison phrases. I know by the end of the unit, I'm going to ask students to write their own comparison phrase that goes with their social justice topic. And they're going to show a visual representation of that. So we spent a moment noticing. Then I revealed the ratios, asked what you wondered, revealed part of the title, then revealed all of the title and the source, and asked for a prediction of the group categories. Then I revealed that the top row was men, the bottom was female, and that still didn't have the descriptor with it. Then we did some comparison before you had the reveal of the whole graph and a chance to, if you were the students, write comparison statements. So how you make the actual slides is I use PowerPoint. You can use any slide system. Put the graph in a slide, get a white box if the background in the graph is white, have no outline in the box, and put it over what you want to not show. And then, well, first duplicate the slide, do that, and then duplicate the slide again, and just keep duplicating, put it in the order where you want to reveal it. But it is helpful to not start with that, but to think, what mathematically do I want out of this? What point do I want students to really see? And with those two questions, you can complete the rest. All right, we're about to do a poll, and Lindsay's going to drop that in the chat for us. And it's because this next activity is one that my students were doing with a partner in paper, but I have a poll for you to do ranking with. And I passed out just the slips of paper that were actually the labels of the bar graph. And I asked them to take those labels and to put them in order from most objectionable at the top to least objectionable at the bottom. And we talked about what objectionable meant. And you're going to see that there's one in the list that students were like, why is that even on this list? Objectionable, look at the bottom right on my slide, it says immigration. And so we had some discussion about how immigration is an offense that you could get incarcerated for, not immigration itself. And then we talked about the difference between an objection something that's feels objectionable, like a revolting to us in some way, and the difference between that and an offense. So I'm asking right now for objectionable, and I have the poll everywhere for you if you would like to use the QR code. And let me get that in the, oh, there it is in the chat. Thank you, Lindsay. And go ahead out to that poll and drag them in the order where you're representing most objectionable at the top, least objectionable at the bottom. A warning that I'm going to take that away so that we can share the. Oh. I'm guessing I did something wrong that there aren't any responses yet. It said activate. Maybe I had done that too early. The link, oh, just click the link. And you can use the QR code that's on the screen now. I'll make it bigger. The link from the chat doesn't work. Michelle says it's open now. It might be that I had to refresh it because I activated it this morning. Might have been a little too early. Can't click on it. Okay. Lindsay's suggesting that you should copy it and paste it to the URL of a web browser, like open up a tab and click it into the top up here. Some people have gotten in. It won't let you copy it.
You can't click on the link. You should be able to highlight it and then copy it and paste it into your web browser.
Or use the QR code that's on the screen. Can somebody explain how to use it from your phone? I think it's a hold it down and slide it, but I didn't redo the poll on my phone to see how that worked. You could go to pollev.com/Connie Rivera 645 and type it in. And Rhonda has an explanation for you, Carrie. Tap and arrow up or down. Thank you. Tap in it to get the arrows. Okay. Coming to the top right now is homicide, assault, and kidnapping. Our bottom one is, unsurprisingly, from a group of adult educators, is immigration. Interesting. I am screen sharing the results of the crowd, and I understand if you're not able to access the poll everywhere. You also will have other ways to do this with your students if you decide to teach it, although I think the one place I might not teach this as the topic, since it feels rather depressing if you are incarcerated, but okay. So I'm just gonna say what we have as a group is that homicide, assault, and kidnapping are most objectionable. Sex offenses is second. Going from the bottom, immigration is the least objectionable, and drug offenses is the second. So this is the graph that I cut out the words from, and right now they're sort of in a pile representing how we did it during class. I passed out what you see behind there with the green and the black bars after they had an envelope of all of those all of those offenses to sort. And when we saw that there was a graph for this, they said, oh, okay, offense. And then they understood why we went over that vocabulary. And they're like, okay, well, maybe the order that we chose is not the order here. So I asked them, which offense do you think will go with each bar? So especially I'm interested in knowing, what do you think the top bar is? My group of students had said that sex offenses were the most objectionable, but we didn't end up keeping that there for which one is the green bar. A prediction in the chat, drugs, and a second of that. In the US, and this is from 2014, we incarcerated the most people for drugs, weapons, homicides, robbery. These are the predictions of our group so far. Drugs, and then adding on specifically possession and not selling. Sounds knowledgeable. So if you have been a part of following these kinds of stories, that's exactly right. It wasn't just selling that people are incarcerated for. There's a lot of possession offenses. So I pass out blank paper and I tell students, okay, one of the pieces of this graph that we're still missing, and it's this blank white space right here, is a circle graph. I took it. I'm not showing it to you yet. I want you as the students, and you as adult education professionals are going to try this. I want you to sketch this circle graph using the same data that's on the bar graph. You're going to have two categories to this data. The first category is drug offenses. The second category is all other offenses combined. So it's a circle graph with two categories. One category is drug offenses, and then it's the green. And then all of the others combined, which is the gray and black, that's the other category of the circle graph. So I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. And I have a way on the internet for you to show me what your graph looks like. I just realized I had nice directions up here that I didn't click for you. There we go. And I'm going to give you a minute to do that. And then we're going to put in the chat a place for you to share it with us. Oh, your employer is the source of the image? That's fascinating. Oh, I was looking at the bottom right where it says like, so you're talking about U.S. Federal Bureau of Prisons. Yeah. All right, so you're sketching a two-category graph. You've got all the info there, but I want to put the link in the chat and to show you that if you can, you might want to use the QR code. And it's okay if you never get out to this slide, you'll still get just as much information. It's just a way for us to share information. If you do make it out to the Desmos site, you will find a slider bar at the bottom. There's a dot with a gray circle around it. You're going to drag that wherever you want to, and it will adjust the size of the green. So it'll start off looking like this. You'll slide that wherever you want to, and then just let go of sliding it, and you will have contributed a response. So the website is student.desmos.com, and you can stop there if you don't want to type in that whole link. Then it will ask you for a join code. You can join without, yes, I'll put the bar graph again. You can join without signing in. You can continue as a guest. I just want to put in the chat this as before I switch slides. So that's the code after you go to student.desmos.com. And here is that graph again. I'm going to go off of that graph again in just a minute to see how the circle graphs are going. So feel free to grab a picture of it if that's an option for you. Oh, lots of people in this activity. You might notice that your name was changed in the activity to show the name of a famous mathematician or scientist. This is a collection of all of your current answers. And you'll see that more will be added if somebody joins the activity. I'm looking at the teacher dashboard side. You do not need to do anything to submit. Just let go of the slider bar and it will appear however it is at that time on my teacher dashboard here. So I see lots of different answers. Some of what we're seeing up here is that you're on the activity and you're still sliding. It just takes a minute to update and load such a big class. So some of the ones that are earlier on the screen, those people are most likely to have finished looking at it already. And so Sharon is saying pretty much it's 50% green and 50% all the other categories. I want to help you see that with something that my students did. Go back to this. All right, so one of the possible misconceptions that a lot of people have is that the longest bar or the last marked unit, which in this case are pretty close to each other, that 100,000, that's the whole. But if that's the whole, then it would be all green, and we know there's two different categories. So I had taught something else that students actually initiated this in class, which was really awesome to me, but you might have to do some nudging. If students cut out the bars, then they can move them around and they can place them end to end to see that comparison that Sharon was referring to. So I'm taking these cutout bars and I'm taping them end to end and seeing how they line up. Let me just answer some things that were questions about the Desmos way to answer. There was no way to submit because it automatically, just as you do it, it's live like a Google Doc is. And you didn't see yourself up there because you might have entered your actual name, but I anonymized the slides so that we couldn't tell. So your name was changed on my side to a famous mathematician or a scientist. So all the black bars here are just slightly over 100%. So it was somewhere around 50%. So once students created that circle graph, then I can reveal the original title of the graph. And it has a subtitle right here. Ta-da! Drug offenders account for nearly half. And I can reveal, ta-da, the circle graph that was on the original graph. And now all the labels for their bars are here. And I can ask students to reflect on how it compared to their ranking and what that makes them think. This obviously led to a what is going on with drugs kind of conversation in class. And it turned into, well, it's not really necessarily what's going on with drugs, but what we, yeah, I'm going to go into a rant if I keep going. So Michelle, thanks for sharing that. So you saw how it could be visual, but you thought about it and made a total from that. Cool. So after this, I wasn't done. I asked students to work with their partner that they had for this activity and to write down as many comparison statements as they can. And then I let their reasoning come out in the discussion. So they might say, there are about 1,000 more people in prison for sex offenses than for extortion and bribery. And formatively assessing, I'm saying, okay, that's actually additive thinking. They're just thinking 1,000 more. And I want to push for multiplicative reasoning. So I'm going to offer, as they're working, if it's not coming out naturally, a few words like one that you used right off in the beginning, double, triple, blank times as many as, blank times more than, blank times greater than. And I'm asking for comparisons using these words so that they say things like, there are 2 times more prisoners whose offense was weapons, explosives, and arson than whose offense was a sex offense. So I do have PowerPoints to support this, but I actually did this as a paper and pencil one on purpose. I had a student in class who culturally was very uncomfortable speaking because there were men in class, and I wanted to make sure that she would still talk. And when she was talking just to her female partner and even not talking because she could slide them in order to say her point, she was much more actively participating. Time check, I'm going to skip past having another discussion about what story this graph told. And I mentioned that I included using the change agent with my students. This is something that can be purchased online, access to every issue that ever was. And it's fairly affordable. I'm sorry, I can't quote what that is right now. And you might consider checking with NELRC or somebody at your state, because there are several states, quite a few of them, that have purchased a statewide membership, and you will have a code to get in. How did I know that about my student? I noticed it and I asked her after class, because I could tell from her written work that she had a lot more to offer, and that wasn't the reason she was quiet. So that was a conversation that I had with her when nobody was around. Yes, Connecticut is one of those states. New Hampshire apparently is. I know Arizona is. I think Massachusetts might be. Not positive about that. I also want to point out that COABE had a prison literacy journal. So if you decided that this is a topic you wanted to look more into, that was in 2019. So if you've never heard of the Change Agent, I'm highly recommending it. It's written by adult education students and their teachers. It's edited by groups of students with different groups for different themes. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't have any idea about the other states that you're mentioning, but you can check with somebody at your state or email or check out the website. Thank you, Lindsay. There's a link right there to the prison literacy issue. So there's going to be a folder of resources. This is a link to that folder. I'm going to just share with you what's in there. This is an example storyboard where you can write some sketches and notes after you find a graph that you're interested in using with your students. Also in that folder is a link about the New York Times series that's called What's Going On in This Graph. There is a website called slowrevealgraphs.com where you can search by graph type, and you can also put in some keywords about content that you're interested in including. Empower is a book series authored at Turk, where I work. And Many Points Make a Point has a lot of supporting of graph work and connections. So that's a resource that I recommend. Until now, everything I recommended was free. That is a for-purchase book. If you don't teach just math and you're interested in Slow Reveal maps, there's a link for Geography for Justice folder, and it has a whole bunch of different topics and Slow Reveal maps. And in all of these resources, when you open up the PowerPoint or the Google Slides, that's the only two that those are usually in, and notice the notes for teachers. So it's under the picture on the slide, and it's under there. I'm definitely going to give you a chance to ask some more questions, but I wanted to also share my contact information and that from our center, because we give a lot of professional development through webinars to different states and by coming to conferences and things like that. So that's contact information. And Lindsay has dropped the resources link in the chat for you. And I want to check back about questions. Thank you, Michelle. I see that note. I've been in adult ed kind of a long time, so it's easier to have a bank of skills to pull from. I will put that back up again. Connie_Rivera at turk.edu. What else are you wondering about this particular unit or about slow reveal graphs? Lindsay, am I correct that there's no way to unmute in this format?
Correct.
Okay, so I'll keep checking the chat. And I may have left too much time for questions with an extra large group. It makes it harder to want to ask them. Access to the chat links. Nothing that, except the prison literacy issue, which is just a few back from your question, nothing is not accessible through that one resource link. So that shortened URL that was a bit.ly, that one link has everything that we put a chat for. And you can also write down my address if I ended up mentioning something that you wanted to ask me about. You can email me. So we do have a little bit more time. If you do also, go ahead and click on that resources link right now to see if it sparks any other questions for you. Lindsay, can you answer the question about the recording? I don't know how that works for this one.
Yep, the recording will be available and it gets sent to you. You'll receive it tomorrow, like 24 hours after the session ends.
Do we teach about analyzing resources, who it's from, ways graphs compare misrepresentative? Any ideas about how to use this process to help students social studies? Well, definitely the slow reveal maps, but also the social justice topics and the ability to learn to process what's in a oops. I'm gonna just stop sharing so I can see that whole chat better, because it scrolled up as I was still reading your question. The ability to look closely and deeply at a graph is going to be really helpful for social studies. So we are learning to analyze the graphs through this. I did not spend a lot of time because I really, even though I did the change agent article, I really spent most of my class time on math. My students were dually enrolled in ESOL classes, so they were getting some language instruction there. So it wasn't like exploring like what's a reliable source. It came up incidentally as they were doing their projects, so that did happen, but I actually didn't focus on that. We talked about how data can tell any kind of story you want it to tell. You have to get it from those numbers. But if you want to make it, like we did talk about making it look unreliable by how you making it look like something it's not, by how you scale the intervals on your graph. So I guess it was more about the opposite of analyzing resources. It was ways to show you what you want to show with data. Jason, is that a question? The unit has a pictograph, bar graph. I don't remember that there's a time graph in that. I certainly have taught that. In fact, using that Empower book, Many Points Make a Point, and more lessons like that. Okay. I'm happy to answer other questions. I don't see any right now. If I missed it, please put it back in, because that was flying by, that chat. Yeah, thank you all for coming. It was definitely fun to have so much happening in the chat.
Thank you everybody for attending. Before you leave, I did launch a poll, so if you can please take that, that'd be wonderful. And thank you, Connie.
Thank you all.
Okay, have a great day.